Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at an extremely unique team in the Remix Cup that just climbed up to 3164 ELO, ranked 3 in the entire world on the Go Battle League leaderboards. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community executor, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now this team is built around a highly unusual Pokemon, and that is Spiritomb. What makes Spiritomb stand out over Sableye in this meta is access to Rock Tomb and having Sucker Punch, which means the Spiritomb actually has a pretty nice Diggersby matchup. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at this unique team dismantling the Remix Cup meta. Hopping into the first match, picking up a pretty decent lead, Spiritomb into Clodsire. There's a save switch into Florges, and Spiritomb gets to bank a ton of energy, and out comes Toxapex. Florges will be able to ramp up its damage with Trailblaze, but this is where the bulk of Toxapex is absolutely criminal. Trailblaze after Trailblaze will connect, but Toxapex just does not care. Even a +2 Trailblaze right here is not going to be enough to knock out. Toxapex will be able to hang on and get the farm down. The opponent actually decides for the Chilling Water. They want this energy to be debuffed so Clodsire can tank it better, but there's the switch back into the Spiritomb, and just like that, the debuff has been reset, so there's 100 Toxapex energy in case it's needed later in the game. Clodsire no shields. The Shadow Ball landing is quite nice for the Spiritomb. Spiritomb is going to be putting up the shield as Earthquake would be devastating. In the back, it's a Shadow Machamp. That's an incredibly cool pick from the opponent. Machamp going to get baited with the Rock Tomb. Spiritomb continuing to farm. There's the switch into the Tentacruel. Machamp being debuffed is so bad for it. Tentacruel no shields and calls the cross chop bait. It was already looking dire, but that bait call should seal it. There's the Stone Edge, but it will not take the knockout. The Scald is reached, but Machamp is going to win charge attack priority. Can Machamp take the knockout here? No, Tentacruel hangs on. Tentacruel will get this Scald, and that's going to seal it, as there's all that energy loaded on the Toxapex. Back in comes the Toxapex. 100 energy, back-to-back brines. First brine is going to connect. Opponent realizes there is not a win con, and they will resign the match. Hopping into the next match, leading Spiritomb into Malamar, a dominant lead. Malamar staying in this matchup, which is great news for the Spiritomb. Due to Spiritomb's dark subtyping, Psywave is double resisted, which means Malamar is going to have a very difficult time trying to generate any kind of advantage. Spiritomb going for the Shadow Ball, anticipating the opponent will try and call a bait, and they do. Shadow Ball connects, and that's going to take the knockout. In comes Carbink, and an immediate pivot out into Tentacruel. Tentacruel just going to try and get whatever damage that it can. Scald will hit for big super effective damage. Carbink does not put up the shield, and in the back is Venusaur. Venusaur will hit for big neutral damage. Can Tentacruel hang on to a Frenzy Plant? Tentacruel is going to no shield, and Tentacruel survives. Tentacruel just looking to lock in some damage with the Scald. The Scald does get the shield. Unfortunately, Switch Timer not yet available, as back in comes the Spiritomb. Spiritomb will get to the Rock Tomb, and this is threatening the Venusaur. Venusaur going to have to put up the shield, but at this point, I think as long as the final shield goes to the Toxapex, this game is a win. Frenzy Plant lands, Spiritomb hangs on, in comes the Toxapex, and there's the switch out, and back in comes the Carbink. Carbink, Rock Slide is going to do basically no damage here. Rock Slide is going to connect, and Toxapex just does not care. Toxapex farming closer and closer to the back-to-back brines. Toxapex, the no shield once again on the Rock Slide, and now Toxapex will finally get to throw some energy. Brine into the Carbink is going to be getting that Carbink low and setting up the farm. Toxapex gets the full farm down, exiting with the Sludge Wave loaded. Back in comes the Venusaur, but with no shields left to hide behind, they get knocked out, and that's going to be a win. Hopping into the next match, leading Spiritomb into Diggersby. Now this is why Spiritomb over Sableye, as Spiritomb does actually have the ability to win the 1 and the 2 shield versus the Diggersby. So Spiritomb's going to do just that, immediately putting up the shield on the Scorching Sands, but disaster strikes, as unfortunately the opponent gets the Scorching Sands debuff on the very first try. That is exceedingly bad luck. That is only a 10% chance to happen. The opponent is now going to be debuffed as well, but for Rock Tomb, that is to be expected. Spiritomb is going to be farming up and launching another Rock Tomb on charge attack priority, but this is not going to be enough to take the knockout. Rock Tomb connects, Diggersby hangs on, and I imagine after the Scorching Sands, we should see a pivot out from the opponent, as they will not want to concede the farm down. There it is, in comes Fury Cutter Golisopod. I love the decision to bank the Rock Tomb and then just send in the wall. That is Toxapex. Toxapex just completely shuts down Golisopod. Golisopod gets a spam out, Aqua Jet after Aqua Jet, and it just simply will not matter. Toxapex farming up, get a look to throw right before it makes it to 100 energy. This is going to be the Sludge Wave. Does the opponent decide to keep the Golisopod around? They do. They put up the shield in the back. That's trouble, and its name is Volt Switch Fortress. Immediate switch into the Spiritomb. Spiritomb will get a last-second Rock Tomb, so the Fortress is going to be debuffed and switch-locked, but unfortunately, this Fortress is just so strong into this entire team. This Fortress is debuffed, but it's still a super effective Earthquake landing into the Tentacruel. And now Tentacruel is dangerously low. It looks like Tentacruel will not be able to survive enough Volt Switches to make it to a second Scald. The Scald is going to land. Tentacruel is going to defer the Volt Switch from that Tentacruel onto the Toxapex and go for the Brine. Brine is going to connect. I believe that Scald that was thrown by the Tentacruel did actually debuff as well. So they go for the Rock Tomb. It's double debuffed. It's not going to do a lot. Opponent is going to fire off a second Rock Tomb, just looking to try and force the shield. There's the shield, and there is the combo play. Out comes Golisopod. Golisopod will take the knockout with the Aqua Jet. Back in comes the Tentacruel, but Tentacruel is not going to be able to take home this win, as there's just not enough HP remaining on the Tentacruel. Tentacruel gets through the Golisopod, but one Volt Switch from the Fortress, or in this case, a few quick attacks from the Diggersby, will mean it's game over. Moving to the next match, picking up a pretty neutral lead, Spiritomb into the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Considering there's two poison types in the back, catching the steel type on the lead is going to be extremely important. Spiritomb puts up the early shield, recognizing that at all costs, this Sandslash must be dealt with. Sandslash now going to be hit with the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb will remove basically their entire remaining health bar, so they will put up the shield. Spiritomb going to elect to let this through. Ice Punch is going to land, and the opponent has their own Spiritomb. Oh my goodness, I never thought I'd see a Spiritomb mirror match in the Remix Cup, but here we are. Opponent puts up the final shield. They are now debuffed as Tentacruel hits the field. Tentacruel always going to be no shielding here, as the Shadow Ball is going to connect, but the important thing is that they are in a range where Scald will knock them out, because they went for the damage of the Shadow Ball and not the debuff. Oh, they actually barely hang on. The Spiritomb survives on 1 HP in the back. They have Toxapex, so the opponent also running this Spiritomb Toxapex core. Tentacruel's going to have to get out of there in a hurry because it was not going to make it to a second Scald. And now we have the battle of Toxapex. This is a very slow moving mirror with a lot of resistant damage and a lot of bulk. But the thing to always watch for is going to be the overfarms. Exeggutor has to make sure that he only throws when he's very close to 100 energy, because he always needs residual in case the switch timer comes up and Sandslash hits the field. Sludge Wave is going to land. Exeggutor also has to watch for a catch. Farming up energy, they try and catch on the Spiritomb, but they are unsuccessful. Back in comes the opposing Toxapex. They can get the shield, but unfortunately their fate has been sealed because they are now switch locked. By failing that catch, their clock is not up. Sludge Wave lands on its intended target. Back in comes the Sandslash, and that's getting outpaced as well. So the Toxapex had to take all 3 knockouts in this game, but that's what it's there for, the bulk, withstanding all those hits to take home the win. Hopping into the next match, Spiritomb into Fearow. Now this is a matchup where, again, it's far better to be a Spiritomb than something like a Sableye. The Sableye wouldn't have the fast move pressure. Fearow's going to have a very big pacing advantage, only 10 turns to a Drill Peck, but Spiritomb will be able to apply very meaningful debuffs. The Rock Tomb is going to connect. There is the switch out into Swampert, and this is a problem. Out comes Toxapex. The hope is that they're not on Earthquake. If they're on Earthquake, this would be catastrophic, and they're not. They're on Hydro Cannon. The fact that they're not on Earthquake is incredibly nice, as Toxapex, in a weird way, despite the fact that normally water poisons get crushed by water grounds, Toxapex is actually fully walling off the energy. Brine is going to land, taking the knockout. In the back is going to be Toadscruel. Toadscruel will be chipped just that little bit by the Brine, and Toadscruel is very bulky. There's the switch into Fearow. Fearow going to get ahead on energy as in comes Tentacruel. Fearow is absolutely loaded. There's the Drill Run. It gets no shielded quick switch into the Spiritomb, but Spiritomb's gonna have to shield as the Fearow hangs on to make it to a Drill Peck. The good news is there's energy loaded on that Tentacruel, and now there's energy loaded on this Spiritomb. In comes the Toadscruel. Shadow Ball is gonna connect. That's devastating damage. Toadscruel is forced to undertap as they can't afford to take the Sucker Punch damage. Seed Bomb takes the knockout. It's gonna be a race to the finish, and Tentacruel, by the absolute narrowest of margins, takes the farm down and steals a win. We move to the next match, picking up a pretty familiar lead, as it's going to be Spiritomb into the Clodsire. This Clodsire not switching out like the previous one did. Spiritomb gonna look to overfarm quite a bit, as if you have residual energy before you throw, it's a lot more difficult for your opponent to safe switch out. Spiritomb going for the Shadow Ball, landing the harder hitting Shadow Ball would be very, very nice. The Shadow Ball does connect, and now with these Sucker Punches, I believe this should be Rock Tomb range. Rock Tomb is resisted, but it should be enough. Clodsire does get knocked out. In comes Florges, aggressive pivot into Tentacruel, and it's the same team as the other Clodsire trainer with Florges and Machamp in the back. Tentacruel, no shields. This is actually a Rock Slide Machamp instead of the Stone Edge from the previous trainer. Now Tentacruel just gets to try and peel away those shields, as the opponent will have to shield everything. Machamp is going to win Charge Attack priority over Tentacruel, denying that Scald as Rock Slide takes the knockout. The only use for Spiritomb is just to get a little bit of Sucker Punch damage and force the Machamp to throw, and from here Toxapex will be able to clean up this game. Rock Slide lands, in comes Toxapex, there is the Florges, opponent's not going to play that out, and they will resign the match. We move to the next match, picking up a great lead, Spiritomb into the Shadow Malamar. Opponent safe switches into Fearow. Spiritomb gonna stay in, hoping for the Drill Peck catch, but instead, it's about to get smacked with a Drill Run. Drill Run is gonna land, and that's devastating damage onto the Toxapex. It looks like with the Pex that this Drill Run will actually two-shot. Toxapex is gonna risk it, no shielding, and pays the price as Fearow wins switch advantage. In comes the Spiritomb. Spiritomb cannot get the farm down, and my goodness, this Fearow is absolutely taking over. As Fearow takes a knockout, in comes Tinkaton. There's a pivot into Tentacruel, answered with the Malamar, and this game is over. Down a shield, there is just no way out. Even with switch advantage, it would still be a pretty tricky game because this team, it has coverage for many things, but it's pretty soft into Tinkaton. And that Fearow being able to force switch advantage and also force the shield advantage as well just meant that there just really wasn't a path. Malamar is going to no shield because Tinkaton is guaranteed to close out this game, and Exeggutor is going to resign the match. Spiritomb into Shadow Dusknoir. This is probably going to be the Master Mahir team, and it is. Araquanid is the safe switch. Now, unfortunately for Araquanid, it's about to hit an absolute brick wall, much like Golisopod, as out comes Toxapex. I really like the decision to stay in with the Spiritomb and bank all of that energy. Araquanid just gonna look to debuff, as it can't really do much of anything. Its Water Pulse is gonna do basically no damage, so they're just gonna go for the non-stop Bubble Beams. Farming up just shy of 100 energy, looking to go for the Sludge Wave. This is now a -2 Sludge Wave. Araquanid tanks it very comfortably. There's the switch into the Dusknoir, going to be answered with the Spiritomb. Spiritomb, already up so much energy, is able to get the Rock Tomb. These Sucker Punches are inflicting so much damage onto the Dusknoir. Spiritomb puts up the shield on the Shadow Punch and will barely be able to make a second Rock Tomb. Now the opponent has to decide, is it worth double shielding Noir? They say yes. They get the farm down, but now they're very heavily debuffed. In comes the Toxapex, and keep in mind the Toxapex basically took no damage in the mid game. Shadow Punch is going to connect. Toxapex gets the full farm down, and now they're in trouble as it's Carbink in the back. Carbink gonna take a little bit of damage from the Brine. Brine's a pretty terrible move, but considering how insane the stats on Toxapex are, that's probably for the best. Back-to-back Brines are gonna land. In comes Tentacruel, and it's checkmate for the opponent. They're going to immediately resign the match. We move to the next game, Spiritomb into Tinkaton. Now this is a worst case scenario Pokemon. We saw it earlier when down a shield Tinkaton was just completely unbeatable. There was no way through it. I'm very curious to see how it plays out of the lead matchup. Bulldoze gets the debuff, that's bad news, and out comes Lapras. This is where Sludge Wave will be incredibly helpful. Sludge Wave into the Lapras, the opponent sniffs it out. They say absolutely no, I am not surrendering the health on my Lapras, and instead they're gonna take the knockout with the Sparkling Aria and exit with so much HP. This is awkward for the Spiritomb. Spiritomb is going to be heavily resisting those Psy Waves, but can't really go for a farm down, which is what Spiritomb would love to do. So Spiritomb is actually forced to throw energy, and by giving back the shield, now that Tinkaton is again going to be an absolute nuisance. In comes Toxapex. Toxapex answered with Regidrago. Regidrago, an incredibly cool pick. One of my favorite Pokemon from last season. With the big rework to Breaking Swipe, I haven't run Regidrago nearly as much, Hyper Beam can be interesting coverage on Regidrago, but I do really miss having a cheaper bait move in Breaking Swipe. Unfortunately, Sludge Wave falls just shy of taking the knockout. Regidrago lands the Dragon Energy, and that's gonna do it, as back in comes the Tinkaton, and there's just no path forward for the Spiritomb, as Spiritomb just cannot make it to 2 Shadow Balls. There's gonna be the Play Rough from the Tinkaton, and they can just go straight Play Rough and win this game. The Shadow Ball is gonna be thrown. This is basically the Hail Mary win con. Shadow Ball gets shielded, and unfortunately, that's going to seal it. Tinkaton, that game was honestly kind of close for how bad of a lead Tinkaton was, but unfortunately, it will end in defeat. Hopping to the final match, leading Spiritomb into Jumpluff. 2 better answers in the back, so there's going to be a safe switch, and out comes Tentacruel. Tentacruel going to be met with an Acrobatics. This will do massive damage. Tentacruel is going to no shield, gets absolutely rocked, and there's a switch into Carbink. Carbink not going to appreciate the Scald whatsoever. Scald is going to connect, and these acids are slowly getting it closer to range where a second Scald could threaten a knockout. Even just flipping switch advantage would be massive. The Scald is going to land. Carbink will get to a Rock Slide, but switch advantage is a must here. You're absolutely going for it every day of the week because Toxapex is going to absolutely shut down the Jumpluff. If Jumpluff gets brought back in, they're going to take a lot of damage, and they're going to have to shield a potential Sludge Wave. Tentacruel gets to the Sludge Wave. Jumpluff does not respect it. They get rocked. In comes Feraligatr to snipe, and now in comes Spiritomb. Spiritomb is just looking to make a Rock Tomb and basically just break the spirit of the Feraligatr before the grand reveal that it's Toxapex in the back. Feraligatr will fire off the Hydro Cannon. Spiritomb knows it does not have to shield. In comes Toxapex, and there is the immediate top left from the opponent. All in all, these were some very fun battles, so many thanks to Exeggutor for sending them in. This is definitely one of the more unique teams that I've seen in the Remix Cup, where I've basically seen 0 Spiritombs up until I ended up queuing into Exeggutor myself a few nights back. I think Spiritomb, it's a really interesting way to try and tackle the meta, because not only does it do very well into some of the more common teams like Fearow lead, Diggersby lead, stuff like that, but it also does a great job at shutting down the Master Mahir team that relies on the Shadow Dust Noir to be able to brute force its way to get alignment and then set up the Araquanid Carbink core in the back. So it's definitely one of the more creative teams that I've seen, as I mentioned, and the results speak for themselves as he was able to have a massive climb up to number 3 in the world. 3164 ELO at this time of the season is absolutely crazy. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.